All right. Happy New Year, everybody. 2011. It's actually New Year's Day right now as I'm recording this. So a Happy New Year to everybody. Hey, what do you think of that new opening music? I had to switch it up. It's the new year. So another Blackball song called Funk for Breakfast. The song Funk for Breakfast, really, there's the reason that was named that way is when we were doing that song at shows, actually, before we recorded it, and I asked Chris, I said, hey, Chris, what is this song going to be called anyways? He goes, Funk for Breakfast. That's just what it was. It has nothing to do with the song, but I love that title of that song. It is a funky song, and why not have some of that for breakfast? Okay, so hope you guys like that as a new intro. It's Blackball off the Hope album. And you can go to Facebook right now, do a search for Blackball, all one word, and Chris threw up a little Facebook page for Blackball and put all the songs from the Hope album up there, so you guys could download them if you're on Facebook. I wanted to throw one out at you since we've been off for a couple weeks, getting back into the acting thing. We talked for the last few podcasts about the music business, and now we're going to jump back into where I pump things up a little bit. Dove a little bit deeper into trying to pursue the acting thing. The only thing I really did when I moved down here was that commercial acting class we talked about. Tried to do the headshot thing and send out headshots to get an agent. Didn't work. And at this point, I am playing in the band. And you've heard all the fun Spinal Tap roadshow stories. So that stuff's still going on. So we're still in the same time frame here. But I was itching to get back into acting, but I really said, you know what, I really don't even know what to do. I don't know how to get an agent anymore. I'm kind of out of the loop. And nowadays, it's a whole nother ball of wax is how you go about getting an agent. It was still at a point where all you could do is go down to a bookstore and pay $6 to $10 for an agent's list. And here's the funny thing, too. They are shrink wrapped, so you can't just like go into like a Borders and just kind of go through it and take notes. You know what I mean? Write stuff down. That's stealing, right? So they put them in shrink wrap bags, and so you have to buy them, in order to look at them. So they're like $6 to $10 agents list. And I would, so I went and I got that, and I said, okay, I'm going to do the agent thing, but I was kind of nervous. So I had bought the book, or a little magazine, and I kind of just put it in the file cabinet. I said, I want to be ready for this. I don't want to just try to get an agent. I want to have some good skill built up again, because I've been out of the loop for a while doing the music. So for several years, I had friends that lived in LA that kept saying, you know what you got to do? You got to get involved, like with a comedy troupe. And there's this one group we saw called the Groundlings. And I said, the Groundlings, what are they? And they go, well, they just do improvisational stuff. And I go, what? Like they jump up on the stage like I did in college and go, okay, give me a name of a fruit, and give me an animal, and give me a street name. And then I take those three things and do a comedy bit. And they go, yeah, it's like that, but it's kind of like sketch comedy. So I was like, oh, sketch comedy. You mean like Saturday Night Live? And they're like, yeah, like that. I was thinking, well, all right, that might be something I want to get into. Still nervous, still freaked out a little bit. So I didn't have the internet yet. Well, we had the internet, but I don't even think the Groundlings or things like that had websites yet. The websites were not common for every single business. You still had to have some money, and you had to be kind of a pretty big deal to have a website up, because it was pricey. So I looked up in one of the drama logs Groundling's phone number and address, and I still didn't have a lot of money, so I was like, this is going to cost like $2,000 for a class, I'm sure, since they're so popular. So I gave them a call, and I asked them, I said, okay, what kind of classes do you have? They said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I'm just new to all this, and I want to study improvisational acting. And they said, okay, well, you can either take our Fun Shop class, which is it's like 3 weekends is all it is, and it was like $150. You don't need to audition. It's just to get your feet wet and kind of see if it's something you like. And that sounded really good. And they said, or you can take the basic class, which you do have to audition for. And after that, we have a series of classes that you get moved up in, based on how well you do. So I was really stressed out while I have this person from the Groundlings on the phone. I'm like, let's do this fun shop, all right? Because I was like, I don't think I can compete with anybody in LA with the improv. These guys are probably really good because the Groundlings thing wasn't widely advertised. So I'm thinking that anybody that's going to be wanting to take a Groundling class is probably already pretty gifted. So I was really nervous about that. And, I had improvisational training, very basic in college, and playing all the different theater games and stuff. So I was like, okay. And here's a good tip of why to take an improvisational class, even if you don't want to do something like that in your career or do sketch comedy. It is outstanding for auditioning. And that was one of the main reasons why I wanted to do it, because I'm looking at it thinking, I want to get an agent, but I'm out of the loop. I'm out of what they're looking for as far as I don't know the whole process thing. I'm kind of stressed out here. Let me get some confidence and some skill built back up. And the best way to do that is learn how to be quick on my feet, right? To be improvisational, where I can just, because I knew, even though, because of that commercial acting class that I took several years earlier, was that, commercial acting, you don't get any time to prepare, really. You show up and you sign in at the casting office, and they give you what's called the sides, which is like a one-pager, which is the script for the commercial. And you're even lucky if you get that. Usually just it's something to tell you a description of what you're going to be doing. So you got to be quick on your feet. You can't let the stress and nervousness and all that take over, because you have one shot, you probably got 30 seconds at most, and you're done. So you really have to be prepared. And I said, well, hey, if I could do this improv thing, I could jump in and snag any commercial that I audition for. Putting the cart before the horse, so I got to do the class first, then start from scratch, new headshots, try to get an agent, all of that stuff. So we're not even there yet. We're just trying to get me in the Groundlings. So I went ahead and I signed up. But before I actually started the class, I said, you know what, when's your next class? They go, it starts next Saturday. I go, oh, when's the one after that start? And they go, oh, in another month. So I said, all right, let's wait a month, because I actually wanted to go see them. So I got a bunch of buddies together, and we made a night of it and went down to Groundlings in Hollywood on Melrose, and we went and watched them. Little tiny theater, and they were amazing. Some of the people that were in this troupe that you might know, a funny guy who's pretty popular now. His name's Will Ferrell. He was in the Groundlings. Sherry O'Terry, also from the Groundlings, that they took to Saturday Night Live with them, and they did the cheerleading duo there, so she's real famous for that. Let's see, who else was there while I was visiting? Chris Kattan. So Chris Kattan was also on Saturday Night Live and did a lot of other movies. A Night at the Roxy, he and Will Ferrell did. They took... It was I believe it was a Groundling skit that they took to Saturday Night Live, and then they made a movie. And I was trying to think who else. Michael McDonald, very famous guy for Mad TV. And he is now a writer and a director, and so he's doing well. So there was a lot of people there, very impressive. And at the time that we went and saw them, in the lobby of the theater, they had signs for Will Ferrell and Chris Kattan and Sherry O'Terry, and I think they might have had something for Michael McDonald, maybe not. I think it was just for those three, because they were actually leaving to go to Saturday Night Live, so they had just got cast at the time. So it was really like, wow, this is really impressive, and at the same time very stressful. I was like, what am I getting into? I cannot be like them. They were amazing at what they can do at improvising. And what I was most intrigued about, though, was the sketch comedy. I was like, okay, there are some sketches that they wrote. Not 100% of everything. Maybe about 80% was improv, and the rest were sketch comedy. Throw some good, solid material in there, because, you really have to play off the audience. And if the audience is not too hip that night, these guys are not going to get a lot of material thrown at them. But, once again, it goes back to them being so good at what they do. One of my favorite and one of the best known Groundlings is Phil Hartman. He was really the master of all of the Groundlings, I think. And I think anybody else that has studied with the Groundlings would agree with me that he could do anything. You remember him from Saturday Night Live, of course, and news radio, and he passed away in the 90s. But he could do anything. You can throw anything at him. And one thing he was famous for was doing these fake commercials. And when I was at the Groundlings, when I finally took this fun shop, one of the things we had to do was we were given an object or a topic, and we had to do a speech on it or a commercial for it. We had to do one of two things in another language, okay, a made-up language. So if you had somebody in the class that spoke Spanish or French, they couldn't use that language. It had to be gibberish, but you had to sell it so that whatever you said, we knew what you were talking about. So Phil Hartman was just really amazing at this. One time I saw him on the Jay Leno show, and Jay Leno just handed him a pen, and he did this whole thing where he's selling a pen in another language. It's just gibberish, and it was amazing, And that's the kind of stuff you do. So we went and saw them. They were awesome. I was freaked out. What am I getting into? It's going to cost me a fortune to get through this program because there's all these classes, and if you don't pass it, you got to retake the class again. So it's not like you just take them all no matter what, which is a good thing, So the way the Groundlings worked is that you had the fun shop, and that's kind of a throwaway class. It's just a warm-up class. But you normally start with the basic. The basic class, depending on if you're going to do it once a week or twice a week, it's a 6 to 8 week class. And you're learning a little bit more than the fundamentals. You're bringing in already some talent and an idea of how to do all this stuff. So you take that class. If you make that class or pass it, you can move on to the intermediate class. The intermediate class gets a little bit tougher because you're also going to start to write just a little bit. Towards the end, you get to write monologues and little sketches. If you get the intermediate, then you go into the advanced class, and that now is really the cream of the crop. And there's like 10 people in that class, and that basically is the 10 or 12 of you are putting together a full show. Okay, so you're now going to write. The advanced class, I think, is, well, you know what? Let me see this. I think the advanced and the writing class are all together. But nonetheless, that's what you're going to do. You're going to spend the whole time writing, put in a real Groundling show together. When it's all done, you perform this show for all the Groundlings that are the working Groundlings. And from that, they pick enough people from the different advanced classes to form what's called the Sunday night troupe. Sunday night would be like on Saturday Night Live. You know how you have the lead people in the beginning when they're doing the roll call of all the people on Saturday Night Live, and then what they'll do is at the end they'll say also featuring so and so. It's like the last people that you hardly ever see in the show, but they might be in one or two sketches. That's what the Sunday night troupe is. It's now the new people that are still not full-fledged Groundlings, but they have an actually Sunday night show, and your goal is to get into that Sunday night show. If you get through the Sunday night show, now I don't know how long you have to do the show for, if it's for a month or a year, whatever. If you stay in that and they like you and you keep doing well, then you might get offered a position to be a Groundling. Here I am starting at the fun shop. Long way to go before we're going to get anywhere with that. So I take the class on once a week on Saturday mornings. So I drive into Hollywood, and it was just a 3-week class. Once again, I'm taking the fun shop. Very stressed out. I get in there. Now, this has nothing to do with the Groundlings, okay? I'm going to talk about the class because I don't want to make it sound like the Groundlings did any of this, because they didn't. It's just the people that signed up. So when I get there, there's all shapes and sizes of people. There's people 10, 12 years older than me. You know, there's people in their 50s, people in their 40s. There's kids right out of college. It's just like all walks of life. Everybody goes around in a circle and says what they do for a living. There's teachers. There's guys that are sales reps. There's doctors. I mean, it really is a fun shop. People taking this, they're doing it for fun. They just want to do it without the stress. So I felt a little bit better. But I also was like, wow, there's a lot of different experiences in here, meaning some people that have no entertainment experience or no acting, others that are like they're just here because a friend told them. And that's the one we hate the most, right people? Remember the famous stories of showbiz people who make it big in a movie? And what got you into showbiz? How did you get your break? Well, my friend was going to audition for a movie, and he said for me to go with him, and I went with him, and they saw me there, and they looked at me and said, why don't you read? And I read, and I got the role. I mean, that's the stuff we all hate to hear. Even if it happened to me, I'd still be mad at myself for doing that, I think. But anyways, the class was well-rounded, I guess. I don't know, not really well-rounded, but, a lot of mix and match type of things. So we started out doing the improvisational games. Now, for you guys, I highly recommend it if you're in LA. And you know what? You don't even have to be in LA to take these classes. So if you live in a town, I don't care where you're at, you could probably find some good improvisational training. And I would take it and do the, don't worry about the level of everybody around you. I kind of got a little, I don't want to say, big-headed about it, but I was kind of like, I'm paying, I don't even know what I paid, $150 for these 3 weeks, and I'm with these amateurs. And then I realized, well, what's an amateur? Somebody who doesn't get paid, who's not a professional and getting paid at being an actor. And I'm not getting paid. I don't have an agent. They don't know me from anybody there. We're all the same. So kind of had to jump off my little high horse there and just suck it up and do the best I can. So I turned around and treated that class like I was going to be in the writing class like the next time around, even though it was still the fun shop. So I had a teacher by the name of Tim Bagley. He was awesome. Now you should IMDb him because he's in everything, and he's a very good character actor. He'd been in Friends at the time. He was in Friends and every show that was on the air. Friends, Wings. I don't know, basically every sitcom on NBC he was on for some reason. He's still working, I don't know if he's at the Groundlings, but he's still going, strong and working and all that stuff. But anyways, he was great, and he seemed to really care. And that's a rarity, too. Another thing, too, when you're taking classes, some of these classes, be careful when you guys are pursuing things like this, that it's a class taught by people that want you to do well, and they care, and they also are doing the craft. You don't want to take classes by people that are teaching because they failed, and they're angry about it, and they just want to make a quick buck, and sucker you into taking a class. Now, I'm not saying these guys live for being Groundlings teachers, because they are Groundlings, and they, of course, are working actors, and they would love to be able to just be actors and not have to teach. So I'm not saying these guys love teaching, but you know what? They do love what they do, and they do care about it, and they're not just going to let anybody come in and wreck their little program. So Tim was awesome. I got this journal that I had put together of when I was at the Groundlings. It was kind of like I wrote down every skit that we did, every sketch we did, just like I did with the commercial class, just so that I could kind of keep track of what I was learning and what was going on. If I could dig that up, maybe I'll open that up and we'll talk through that and have some commentary and see what's going on. The improv is awesome for becoming stronger at auditioning, but I'll tell you what, it's not for everybody. And though I could get through it okay, it's really not my thing. I really like the tools and all the fun stuff, but it's not for everybody. So I don't want you people out there that are pursuing acting, that if you don't do well at the improv, it doesn't mean you can't be an actor. It doesn't mean you can't do that stuff, although it is a tool that you should work on to try to develop, just to be able to be, more organic and realistic, as they say. So when I tell you this stuff, what's going on in the Groundlings, it's not horrible. It's actually a lot of fun, but I'm going to make it kind of sound like it was horrible, because that's kind of funny, right? Is it funny when we make fun of our tough times in life? And so that's kind of what I'm doing here. So at the Groundlings, I took that fun shop, and I did really well in that. Took the basic class. And because I took the fun shop, I got to go into the basic, and that's really the first of the Groundling classes. Now, in that class, it was pretty tough, and there weren't a lot of good people in the class. I was surprised, because I'm thinking, like, well, this is the more serious people now. The fun shop is for anybody on the planet. The basic classes are for the people, I'm thinking, that want to become Groundlings, or they're working actors, or trying to be whatever. It was pretty tough. Now, my teacher's name was Steve Kahila, Very funny guy, and I really, really liked him. And at the time that movie came out, he was doing voiceover work in cartoons. He was in Space Jam with Michael Jordan. He was the voice of one of the monster cartoon characters. It was a cartoon in that movie. He was also in Sergeant Bilko. They did a remake of that with Kelsey Grammer, and he was in that movie as well. But he was really a funny guy and really tough, really tough. So it's almost like everything you did would be like, that wasn't good, that wasn't good. But I took my notes, I sat in there, and everything everybody did, I tried to do my best. And once the class was over, or towards the end of the class, he was kind of chewing everybody out. He basically said, "Look, you guys got to take this seriously. If you want to keep moving on in this thing." Larry, and he pointed me out, he goes, "is the only guy in this class next to this, I think this one other girl," he says, that's taking notes. I mean, do you guys ever write down what you're doing, what's working, what's not working? You need to be taking notes. Now, I just thought I'm like, well, I don't know why anybody else is not taking notes. I take notes because I have to. I'm not trying to be a show-off. I'm really like, I got to remember how to do this stuff, and every little thing they say, I write it down, And so that kind of made me feel good. And it doesn't mean I was the best performer. It just meant that, I was just, in his eyes, it's like, I was taking it seriously, I guess, because I was taking notes, and when he would talk, I'm like, okay, I get it. And, but it was a tough class. And when you finish the class, a couple days later, you'll get a call from your instructor letting you know whether you passed or not, whether you're getting to be moved up. So the class was over, and it was one of those classes I took during the day. I had my flexible job, so I would drive into Hollywood after work and spend a few hours with the Groundlings doing that stuff. And it's a long drive home on a weekday, and it took me like an hour and a half to get home. And I was kind of like, oh man, you know what? I'm not going to pass, and it's a lot of money. I don't have to take this class over again. So Steve calls me a couple days later. He says, "How's it going, Larry?" I go, "Pretty good, man." He goes, "So, how do you think you did?" And I said, "Well, I'll be honest." I go, "It's very tough." He goes, Yeah. I learned a lot. I worked really hard. I think there's a lot of things I could work on, obviously, to get better. But I actually thought I did well. I met my goal. I think I did what I thought I would do. And he goes, Huh. Well, basically, nobody in the class passed, except for two people. Jennifer, which I really don't know what her name was. I can't remember what her name was. He goes, "And you made it." And I was like, What? He goes, "Yep, good job, buddy." He goes, "So now you're going on, but you got to bring it. You can't. This was just the basic one. It's it's great that feel good that you made it, but you can't slack off now." And I was just like really excited, but freaking out at the same time, because once again, there's that competitive part, right, where you just want to keep going, you want to keep winning, and then you realize, like, what am I getting into? Because when you get higher up in the Groundlings, I mean, it's serious players, and it's a lot of work, and there's no room for error, and it's very competitive. But put all that aside, I was excited. And so I got into the next class. A buddy that I met, who I recently connected with back again on Facebook after many years, Dave Ship. Hey, Dave. Miss you, buddy. I want Dave to come on the show. He's a funny man. Dave was in my intermediate Groundling class, and he was awesome. He still is awesome. I don't know what he's, I'm sure he can do it just as well as he did many years ago. But Dave was in the class with me, and just was, every time he stood up there, he just watched and observed, and he just fed you whatever you needed, and it was really natural. It wasn't like he was putting on a show, and he wasn't being a cliche kind of a stock character, as they call it, where it's just kind of like this, we've all seen it before, kind of a goofy guy or country guy, all these stereotypes. But anyways, he came up to me one day after class, and he had said, "Hey, I've got this comedy troupe that I'm with, that I started. They're called the Hauska Comedy Troupe, Hauska." I'm like, "Hauska? What is that? Is that somebody's name in your family?" He goes, "No, it's." He goes, "I'm Finnish. I'm from Finland. My family, and it's Finnish for laughter, and that's what we're called. Now, we both lived in the South Bay area, we call, of Los Angeles, where the beach cities are, San Pedro, Redondo Beach, all that. And that's where he and his troupe all were from. And he wanted me to come see them perform at this coffee house and consider performing with them. And I'm like, wow. Because he goes, oh, yeah, we perform at the Comedy Store and the Ice House in Pasadena, which is a popular club, comedy place at the time. So I was like, okay. So I went and checked him out and came and watched him. And Dave was really good. He had about 2 other guys that were really, really sharp. One of them was a stand-up comic, and he did really good impersonation. So he kind of did his shtick in there. He kind of hosted a lot of the theater games or the improv games they would play with the audience. He didn't so much participate. And I forget his name, I apologize. And then Dave would be usually the lead guy in each bit. And then he had one other guy that was really, really good as well. And then everybody else, they were kind of like, eh. So what Dave was doing is when he would rehearse with these people, he's basically, everything he's learning at the Groundlings, he's like teaching them, okay, this is what we got to do, kind of a thing. So I was like, okay, I'm interested. So I asked Dave if he was interested in doing sketch comedy. He said, well, we're kind of an improv, but we do have a couple sketches that we wrote, and they had performed them. I thought they were pretty funny. And I was kind of leaning towards, well, I don't really want to do improv. I want to do sketch comedy, something that's written, I can memorize the lines, and, we could throw some improv in there, but that's not really what I want to do is the improv. I want to do sketch comedy. Well, during the time that I went to visit or watch the show, he pulled me up out of the audience to perform with them as though I was a spectator not knowing what was going on. I didn't know ahead of time he was going to do it, but I knew when he threw me up there, I obviously knew how to play the theater game they were doing. And it's a game called Story Story. Here's an example of improvisation gone bad, okay? The way the game works is that there's a line of people on the stage. It could be at least three people. I think there were 4 people, including me. And what it is, a person on the very end will start a story. Dave is in the audience pointing at them, like with a stick or just whatever, a pointer or whatever. And they would start the story, with a subject and, something you pull from the audience. So, give me a celebrity, give me a place, and one other thing. I don't know. So he points to the person, they start telling the story. And it goes something like, let's see here. I can't even think of anything. Matt Damon was walking through the park one day with his dog, Spot. Matt and Spot were enjoying the stroll in the nice summer, and then while you're talking, he then points to somebody else. And they have to continue the sentence. Very difficult. And when I mean continue, I don't mean like start a new sentence, not start a new thought, but they have to continue. Now, since Dave is running the game, he's got the skill knowing when to stop. You try to stop a mid-sentence when they say and, or maybe right when they finish something. You can't start over. So then it goes to the next person, and of course it comes to me, and luckily, I know how to play the game, so I was able to play along, though I hate it. But here's how it went wrong after that. After I said my line, he pointed to the next person, who decided to negate everything we just said. And that's the first no-no in improvisation is you never say no. It's always yes. Yes, and. There's another game we play at the Groundlings called Yes and, where somebody will be in front of you, you face each other, and they state something. I'm going to go to the store today. And then you look at them and you go, yes. And then after that, I'm hoping to comb my hair. Yes. And I also was thinking about reading a book. Yes. And so you just keep going back and forth so that you keep everything consistent. Sounds kind of silly, me just doing it like that, but it's very hard to do. So anyways, what happened, I said my thing, wherever we got in the story. And then the person all of a sudden goes, but it really wasn't Matt Damon. It was a fish, and he was flying through the air with wings. Something crazy like that. And all of a sudden I could just, I'm like, I got to get off this stage. This is like, whatever it was. I don't remember the outcome of it other than it just being really bad. And that was an example of like, you know what, if you're not good at it, you shouldn't be playing it, kind of a thing. That was a tough one. So after that, I got off the stage. I was like, when the show was over, he goes, "Oh, what do you think?" And I'm like, "Okay, well, no, you guys are awesome. I think you guys are great. I like to, because I wasn't anything to write home about, so I wasn't thinking like I was better than anybody else. I just knew my limitations." So anyways, I hooked up with him, and I would rehearse with him once a week. But one thing I will talk about is my good buddy Tom Martin, hated Tom, is a writer. And he came to see one of the first shows I did with them. And it was okay. It wasn't that great. But I asked Tom, I said, you know what? I go, I know you're a writer. And this is before, and Tom's the reason why I'm a writer. He got me into writing. But at the time, I wasn't, I just kind of wrote on my own very infrequently, and I had no confidence or skill set to draw from other than, like I said, from college and creative writing. But I didn't consider myself a writer, whereas Tom was like, he wrote and wrote and wrote, and that's what he wanted to do. And I said, can you write me a sketch for me and Dave that we could do? And so he says, all right. So he wrote this sketch, which was hysterical, called Diet Buddies. Now, I'm skinny, and Dave is taller than me, and he was skinny at the time. So we're two skinny guys. And the premise of the Diet Buddies is that they used to be heavy, now they're thin, and they walk around with this little bell. Or I can't remember. It's like anytime they hear a bell, or they actually have a bell in their pocket. But anytime they can be mid-sentence talking, and if they hear a bell, it's like Pavlov's dog. It makes them, they go cracker, and they pull out a cracker and they eat. This is part of their diet program. They eat these little saltine crackers. So they could be talking, and a bell goes off, and they just mid-sentence cracker. Kind of like the dog in the movie Up, where he goes squirrel, that kind of a thing. Right in mid-sentence he's talking, and then he sees a squirrel. So it's that same kind of. It was actually is a funny skit. Problem is, love Dave. Dave, where I'm leaning towards sketch comedy, Dave himself was like, well, I like to keep it all free-flowing improv, which I have no problem with, except for I'm kind of trying to stick to this script and these funny words that Tom wrote. I learned the lines. I rehearsed during our rehearsal session for the rest of the people in the troupe, see if they thought it was funny. They liked it, gave it a thumbs up. But when I was rehearsing with Dave was kind of like, oh, yeah, okay, we got it. We'll just kind of, he was kind of still trying to keep it flowy and floaty and kind of still room to play, so to speak. So the night of the sketch came, and Dave will have to come on the show and defend himself. So Dave just decided to just kind of just wing it. Now he learned some of the lines and tried to stay with the idea of the sketch, but the only thing that we got right together was ringing a bell and eating the cracker. The rest of it was like I could just feel, oh my goodness, I'm talking about, this is like my head pounding and that nervous, like you're gonna throw up. Now, it's one thing, we weren't playing like at the Comedy Store or a place where there were like 100 people or 75 people in the audience. We were playing a little coffee house, and there might have been 15 or 20 people, so it's really no big deal. But I looked at it like, look, just like when we played in Blackball, we played a show when there's 6 people in the audience. It's like you gotta play as though a million people are watching. You don't give it any less energy because of the amount of people were there. Okay, don't forget that. How not to succeed. If you base your performance on the size of the crowd, that's when you're going to fail. So listen to what I say. Give it your all. Every single time. 150,000%. How's that? So I could just see this, because I could look at Dave, and Dave just like doing his thing and improvising. And it's now it's not looking like a comedy sketch anymore. And I don't remember. I think it ended okay. Once again, I got to have to ask Tom and Dave. But that was a tough one for me, and I was kind of like, wow, Woo! This is tough stuff. But, it's a good lesson. It was a good lesson for Dave and myself, for me, just to not, be ready for anything, was what I needed to learn from that. For Dave, it was like, hey, sometimes you got to stick to the script, and let's go through it. So anyways, that was a fun time. And we did do some more fun shows after that. But isn't it fun to talk about the failures as well? So it's been a good show, real quick and painless. Hopefully it wasn't too bad. I thought it was pretty fun. Good to talk to everybody again. Come back, please come back. Happy New Year once again, and we will talk to you soon. Bye bye.